Hey, I'm Rusty.
And I'm Heather.
And we're the Bryants, and this is the Redeemed Marriage Podcast.
We are here to encourage healthy marriages, strengthen wounded marriages, and begin the process of restoration to broken marriages.
We aren't licensed counselors, but we are a redeemed couple that loves the Lord and wants to help you journey through this messy, challenging, and fun part of life called marriage. Hey gang, Rusty and Heather Bryant back with you on another episode of the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. You looked over and smiled at me because I kind of twisted
Said, hey gang.
I twisted things up and changed things up because...
Instead of, hey guys.
No, I usually say, hey everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now they're a gang.
Y'all are our gang. It's our posse. So first of all, I know that people listen to this at all different times, but we are coming a little bit later, a couple of days later than what we normally do for our weekly episode. And it was great to have people asking us where our episode was. But, you know, the summer gets crazy. It was a holiday weekend as well. So we're just playing catch up a little bit. And we've been sort of digesting and letting this thought for today sort of marinate. And now we're ready. We're ready to give it. But we're in a little bit of a between seasons, I guess you could say, on the podcast.
Our topics.
Yeah, because we just finished up the seasons of marriage. And, yeah, that's confusing that I said the word season.
It's fine.
So we just finished up the seasons of marriage. So go back and listen to that. And, hey, if you get a chance, leave us a rating or a review. Or just shoot us a note. Tell us what you thought about the different seasons of marriage. We'd love to hear from you. And also, you can leave comments and contact us directly through our website, theredeemedmarriage.com. So there you go. Just throwing that out so everybody knows. But we're also working on a bigger season of topics coming up. But it's going to take us a little time to kind of put that together and prepare for that. So as we're rounding out the summer, we're just going to kind of do some random topics over the next few weeks. And this one sort of birthed out of a sermon that we heard at our church. So if you want
So a couple of weeks ago, our pastor, Chip Henderson, he did an unbelievable series called Dysfunctional. And he talked about dysfunctional marriages. He talked about dysfunctional families. He talked about dysfunctional kids. He talked about a lot of dysfunction, and how God can use that and restore in those situations, and how we need to follow God and His prompting through those. So the series was unbelievable, but the last one was on dysfunctional children, and he talked a lot about the importance of parents blessing their children, and talking about how we have the power as parents with our words and with our actions to bring blessings upon our children. And we ended the service singing that, I think it's Carrie Jobe's song called The Blessing, and talked about, the song talks about how it's from generation to generation. And I think you even mentioned this on the podcast a couple of weeks ago after this sermon. I got very, very overwhelmed with emotion in that moment. Listening to that song and knowing how God has blessed our family with the fact that you didn't give up on me, and that He broke me in a way that I was seeking restoration and knowing Him more. And so I just got very overwhelmed with the blessing part that God has blessed our family and our marriage specifically. Well, I could not get that sermon off of my mind. I kept thinking about it. And, I feel like there's lots of things that we've done wrong. But when I think about the fact, do my kids know that I love them? And do I affirm them? They might even say too much, that I give them too much affirmation sometimes, just in the fact that they know that I love them, and we do try to bless them with our words. Well, as I was continuing listening, I mean, just throughout the week, and just praising God for what for Chip's message, and how that how God was speaking to me through that, I just kept hearing over and over again that this is just as important for marriages, that the speaking of a blessing and words of affirmation and making our marriages something that our children will then pass down to their children and their children and their children. And I just kept hearing this thought of us being able to change the trajectory of our family tree when it comes to marriages. Now, we luckily, and praising God for it, come from two very strong families in marriage, and we've had that modeled to us, and we've had that that example. But I know that there's a lot of people out there that have not, that didn't come from marriages that were God based, and that was the center of their worlds and the center of their marriage. And so maybe there is a lot of brokenness along the way. So them being able to listen to this and claim, I'm going to speak words of affirmation and words of blessing and encouragement over my marriage, where my children hear and where people hear, and that they can then be an example of what that's supposed to look like. So then their children have that example, and their children's children have that example. So that was a long introduction to say that I just can't get this off of my heart. And I've told you all week, I'm like, this is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to talk about. And he gave, I believe, 4 different ways that we can bless, of course, in his sermon, and I encourage everyone to go back and listen to it. But of course, in his sermon, he was talking about how we can bless our children. But to me, it is just as important, if not more, to speak these words and do these things when it comes to our marriages.
So you got the 4 things?
Yeah, I have the four things. I just didn't know. I talked a lot. I didn't know if you wanted to.
No, I think that's great, because what we really want to do is to give you these 4 sort of points that you can, I guess, action steps for your marriage this week. And what we really want that to do is we want it to encourage your marriage, and at the same time, if you have children, we want it to be a model to your children, so that it's blessing them to see a marriage that's chasing after God.
Yeah, and we say to be a model for your children, and that is a huge part of it. But if you do these things, it's going to change you. Mm-hmm. It's not going to just change your marriage. It's going to change who you are. It's going to change who I am if I do these things. Because I'm putting more effort into our marriage, and it's going to change my perspective into a godly one as I pursue having a godly marriage. So the first one is you actually have to speak words. Mm-hmm. You can't just assume that your spouse knows that you love them, mm-hmm. and what you think about them. And I'm not going to say this with everyone because I've already said he had these examples with children, but we do that with our children too. Like, do we just assume that they know? I mean, I cook for them, I wash their clothes. Surely they know that I love them.
I told you I loved you the day we got married. If it changes, I'll let you know.
Exactly. But I mean, I just think using your words is so important. Mm-hmm. Not just saying I love you, but telling your spouse how you feel about them, what you're thankful for about them, how they have blessed you. And so these are just using your words and not just assuming that they know.
I was listening to a sermon this week. We love listening to sermons on marriages, because it encourages us, but also gives us things that we can share with other people. And one of the pastors we listen to a lot is Craig Rochelle, and he talked about words and the words that you say to your spouse. And one of the things that I've heard him say and other people say is, when you think something good, say it. Because a lot of times I think we just we think of something, but then it never actually comes out of our mouth. So just like you said, you got to actually speak those words. And then the other thing that he said is that this is the case for most women and most men, not all, but for most women and most men. Most women want to hear words of affection, and most men want to hear words of affirmation. The other thing that he mentioned is to try to say not just "I love you," but "I love you because." And you add something to that so that your spouse knows exactly what it is that you appreciate and what you love about them.
And, along those same lines, I think it's so important that we build each other up, not just in our homes, but in front of our children and in front of other people. Like, if you just say something, you're not going to be the obnoxious, always bragging on your spouse person. But if you're in a group of people and y'all are talking about, it could be as simple as you're, grilling out like last night. And you say something about, Rusty's amazing on the grill. Like, I don't know, half our dinners wouldn't be done, couldn't get done if it weren't for him.
Did you say
because
that?
No, because you were grilling and I was near college students.
So you thought it. You didn't speak it. I see. This is just what we're talking about.
I was just using that as an example of just saying things that encourage your spouse, even in front of other people, because you're just showing your affection and your love and your affirmation towards them in a more public way. And that, again, not constantly. It gets annoying, but it's okay to do that, especially in front of your kids, The second one was learn how to give affectionate touch. And I think that's super, super important.
Yeah, this is really funny because that sermon that I listened to this week, and maybe they collaborated a little bit because no. One of the points that he made was for non-sexual touch. And it was funny because he said, if you're not sure what that means, he said, let me give all you guys a definition. You can write this down. It is touch that is non-sexual.
That clears it up.
I thought it was hilarious, though. But hey, sometimes we just need that knock in the head, the guys out there. But no, I love that because we, sometimes we don't show that to our children for sure. We don't show that to other people and, in public or whatever. We're just not affectionate or show. And we're not saying to be gross,
sure.
But just to show, your children and other people that you really do love each other. And so much of that is that non-sexual touch. Yeah. And I think it's so important just for your marriage relationship. You need
just
that.
Holding hands during the movie that you're watching, or I can't tell you how much it means to me when we're sitting in church and you just put your arm around me. It's almost like, this is my wife. It's kind of but I'm proud of you. I'm okay with showing other people that we go together, that we belong together, and so just affectionate touch shouldn't be uncomfortable. It shouldn't be like, oh gosh, he put his hand on my leg, he must want something. Like, just it's okay just to come up behind your wife and hug her, or while she's washing the dishes, just and use your words. I'm thankful for you. Thank you for doing that. For our family.
That's good.
All right. No, the third one was paying attention. Just be attentive to what's going on, how they're feeling. You can tell if something's going on inside of them that needs to be addressed. And just making sure that your spouse knows that that you see them and that you matter to them.
I think that we made a post recently on social media that just talked about how when your spouse or your children, when it's time for them, when they are ready to talk, that you make sure that you get rid of all other distractions so that you can communicate with them and you can listen attentively. And I think that a lot of times we're not necessarily ready for our children or our spouse when they're ready to talk to us, and maybe we're in the middle of something. It's just so important just to stop what you're doing if you're able and really pay attention. And so much of that is these stupid cellular devices. And
just Did you just say cellular device?
I did. Cellular devices.
Or cell phone.
Because I was thinking of, like, you know, iPads and just, I mean, you're on your computer and, you know, when you're just busy doing
just
that.
Put it down and make eye contact.
Yeah. And even, I mean, you know, when you're watching TV and stuff, it's just, you just have to shut it off.
Yeah.
And just shut it down so that you can really be attentive and show, it just shows respect, and it shows that you care, and what they have to say matters to you.
Yeah. Absolutely. The fourth one was celebration. Of course, with children, he talked about, you know, different, you know, things they do in their family, or if he's heard of people doing, you know, special birthdays, but when we're relating this to marriage, we need to celebrate things and make them a big deal, especially like anniversaries and important dates, and just celebrating your spouse. It may not be something that the two of you do, but, you know, when I took a test recently that I had studied for and needed to really needed to pass and do well, and I did, and you were like, let's go celebrate, like, let's go out to eat. And we went out to eat with some friends, and they had something going on in their life too, and we celebrated them and the passing the test all at the same time. And it just felt important to me because it was important to you, and that made me feel loved. And so it doesn't have to be a test or just your anniversary, but find things to celebrate, and to celebrate well.
Yeah, and I think even like small things that don't even have to be the big moments of life, you know, like, you know, annual things, you know, that's the first thing that comes to mind. You're thinking of birthdays and anniversaries and, you know, things like that. But I think even celebrating things that are important to your spouse. I know recently with you have a new position, and so you've been sending me updates and pictures and stuff. And, you know, for me to just acknowledge how, you know, the hard work that you're putting into that, I think those kind of things are important, that you're just celebrating the daily
That's right.
things too. So it's not just, oh, I can't forget the anniversary, you know. Lord knows I did that one time. And that was a bad day. But I was running a camp, and that was bad. That was really early on, pre-children too. But we, you know,
you told on yourself.
I did, because it just hit me like a ton of bricks. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot our anniversary one time. But we, I just think that those little things end up being more important, because it's just, you know, I'm not just remembering the big deals. I'm remembering, or I'm thinking about and celebrating you every day, and the little things that are going on. So,
right. And those are going to look different for everybody, what those little things are.
Sure.
You know, I mean, and they do for us every day. But just celebrating well with each other and encouraging each other.
I mean, I'm thinking about the spouse that's trying to lose weight. And look, every half pound matters.
Absolutely.
When you're trying to lose weight. You know,
and I'll be guilty of saying, oh my gosh, I've worked so hard this week and I only lost a half a pound. And you flipping that and saying, it's a half a pound. Like, that's a really big deal. They add up, you know, blah, 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 keep going. You're really good at celebrating me. You are. I don't think I celebrate you as well. Maybe that's why one of the things that I was like, ooh, maybe that's something I need to do better.
And the funny thing about that is, and we've heard this our whole marriage, but you tend to love the way that you want to be loved, and my love language is words of affirmation.
Absolutely.
And so that may be because it just comes natural. And I don't think that's not your number one love language, but it's important.
Sure.
It's probably more, and it's more important now than I think it was when we first got married.
Sure.
But that doesn't mean that you dislike that,
Right.
when I celebrate you and affirm you and all that.
Right.
But in the same way, I've got to be careful that I'm not just loving you that way, because
Right.
that's the way that comes natural to me, because that's the way I want to be
Right.
loved.
Right. Well, and I can remember some of the texts that you're talking about when I would send you and say, look, I finished this section today, or I finished this section today, because my new position is requiring a lot of organizational things, which I really, really, really enjoy. And I would say,
Can
look,
I time out just for a second?
What?
I have thought about this so many times this week, because please don't lose your train of thought. Go ahead. You finish, and then I'm coming.
It definitely wasn't important as what you're fixing to
This
say.
isn't important at all. This is just a little side note. This is not important at all. This is just
I was
funny.
going to say, when you respond back with a funny little gif, or you're going to be the best at your job, or whatever, it just brings a smile to your face.
Yeah.
And that carries over into me coming home and being excited about what I've accomplished, and it just all connects. It all connects to make marriage better when you focus on each one of these things individually and be purposeful in them. Okay, go.
Okay, so this is kind of the last thing. We'll sort of wrap things up here in just a second, but this was funny, and it just reminds me of how much of a sense of humor that God has when he puts people together, and how different we are. So there's this side of you that's so incredibly organized. Like OCD type organized. And, with your new position, you've just been working so hard, and it's like, it's over the top organization. Even in our home, like the other day, you came in and you were like, can we all get this place cleaned up? And we looked around, and there was like a basket on the table and a stack of clothes somewhere. And we were like, okay, that's it. And so, you're just so incredibly organized, and so some things maybe, I'm pretty organized too on some things, but then it comes to this podcast. And so we go on a walk a couple of days ago, and usually when we're walking, that's when we start talking about topics and what we want to talk about. And I'm like, hey, what have you been thinking about for this week? Because we're not doing a series or season of topics. So she tells me what she wants, and I'm like, okay, good. But I have to wrap my head around this. And you guys that listen to us regularly, you this, because I want the 3 points in the poem like a sermon. But I want it to be a little more organized, which I think is great, because you're more fly by the seat of your pants and do whatever. But I asked you, I was like, so what exactly are the points going to be? And you were like, I don't know. I just, this is just the topic, so I just want to talk about it. And then I'm like, okay, hold on. How can you send me those pictures of all of that OCD organized things, but then it's like, yeah, I just want to talk about marriage. So
You like the bullet points, and I like the overall arching main idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You like the details.
But what's so great about that is that there's people out there that listen to us.
And they listen both ways.
Yes, because there are people out there that they want to just hear you talk. They just want to hear you ramble.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good rambling. But then there's other people that are like, I need to spend my 30 minutes with Rusty and Heather and walk away from it with this point. I need to know, I need this point when I leave here. And so that's what's so great about it, because, and again, I say all that very jokingly and lovingly, because we're so different, but not, you're different in two different areas of your life.
That's right. That's right. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry.
You just never know what you're going to get.
I'm sorry.
Oh, man.
But you do so well putting up with me.
Well, so the last thing, and you actually saw this on social media, but it was a part of the sermon that I kept referring to. But he was talking about how guys can make anything sexual. You know, like, hey, you need to mow the yard. I'll mow your yard. You know, hey, we need to get the tires rotated. I'll rotate your tires. You know,
My favorite one was the pot.
yeah,
Can you
in
stir
the kitchen.
the pot? I'll stir your pot.
But then he said, this is so true. He said, you know, you can say that one day, and it's cute and funny. But the very next day, you could be at the same time of the day in the same place in your house, and you can say the same thing, and your wife's going to think you're a jerk. And he's like, I have no idea why. I don't either.
And we don't either.
Oh, my goodness. So we are different, but we need to learn to love our differences and celebrate them.
That's right.
Together.
So for our point people, the point of this, what can you go do? Go.
Yeah, because you don't know. You don't know a point. You're just like, I don't know. We just talked about this. No, there were 4 points.
There were 4 points.
There were 4 points. But to wrap it all up and not give 4 points again, basically the overall, you like,
I love it,
is just that we need to bless our spouses in these different ways so that our children and other people see it. And it helps your marriage. Obviously, your marriage is going to grow, but you're leaving a legacy behind.
Yep.
So there you go. Wrap it all up, tie it in a bow. There's your message for the day. Hey, we enjoyed being with you today and enjoyed being with you this week. And hope you have a great week, and we're going to see you again next time. Thank you.